Who is Cynthia Harris? Welcome to a special episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. We have an interview with Cynthia Harris, running for Supervisor of Elections in Orange County. And Cynthia, introduce yourself.
I'm Cynthia Harris, and I am your candidate for Orange County Supervisor of Elections. The reason I'm running is because I believe that we should have accessibility and fair and free elections. And I think that is most important in a supervisor of elections. You want someone who's going to be able to make sure your voice is heard regardless of the party that you belong to, because it's not about a party. It doesn't matter what party you belong to. You should be able to have your voice be heard and have accessibility at all times, as well as be educated.
Well, you do have to be, have to talk to your party right now, don't you? Is this a partisan election, correct?
It is.
But you're going to be able to speak to both sides during your primary?
That is correct.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic.
Well, speaking of primary, Cynthia, you are running as an NPA, non-party affiliate, correct?
That is correct.
And so that changes the dynamics of the primary. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that?
So because we are a closed primary state, in August, you're either going to vote for a Democrat or a Republican. There's no other parties that are recognized in the state of Florida. However, I'm running as an NPA. If there was another NPA to enter the race, then I would have a primary in August. So as a candidate, I would go straight to the general.
Okay, all right.
So we're going to see you. We're going to see you in November, no matter what.
That is correct.
See, that's why you need to know about your local politics.
And that's one of the things that I want to do with this office as the supervisor. You hear about the mayor's academies within the county and the city.
Correct.
I also want to be able to have not only a academy for adults, but also for our teenagers, because civics is not really taught in school like it was when I was growing up. When I was growing up, you had Schoolhouse Rock. That's how I made it through history class. And civics, I had to learn the preamble and learn what a bill was. You know, those were Schoolhouse Rock Saturday morning cartoons that got me through. And when you ask young people now, they barely know who their elected officials are.
That's true.
And they don't understand that when they can register to vote. And now that we have new rules in place for first-time registered voters, first-time registered voter cannot vote by mail. They must go to the poll when they're voting for the first time. And those are the things that a supervisor is there to make sure you educate people, so that on election day they don't say, well, I didn't get my vote by mail. Are you a first-time registered voter? Yes. Well, then you must go to your polling location.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is significant. And with issues or concerns about election integrity, I guess some of these rules are addressing that. Are there concerns that you may have about election integrity that you may want to share with our audience?
So election integrity is always a concern of voters, especially if you're a super voter. A lot of times people they hear the term super voter. A super voter is a person who has voted consistently in every election, no matter what. And then you have sporadic voters. They vote maybe just in a presidential race or what have you. But you also want to make sure that the chain of custody, whether you vote by mail or if you vote in person, is protected.
Hmm.
And so that's integrity. You want to make sure that, so often I hear people say, oh, my vote don't count, it doesn't matter, they're going to do what they want to do. They only do what you allow them to do.
Okay.
And so, one of the great things about democracy is being able to voice your choices. We had taxes on the ballot last election,
Right.
and it was the voice of the people that had to be heard, and it was through voting.
Okay. All right. In Orange County, are you replacing the current supervisor of elections? What's the circumstances that have caused this election to come up? We know it's a regular election, but we know that the previous supervisor resigned. There's a new one now. Are you expecting him to stay in the race or stay or file for this race?
Well, he was appointed by Governor DeSantis.
Hmm.
So currently he is our interim supervisor of elections. He has yet to file or declare that he wants to run for the seat. Um, in my opinion, I think if he was going to run, he probably would have already declared by now.
Sure.
So I'm thinking that because it's an open seat, Bill Cowles left in January, that the the possibilities are endless for my candidacy to prevail.
Excellent. Excellent. Joel?
Well, I like the fact that you're an MPA, and I kind of want to go off of that because a lot of times the complaint is that it's a partisan position. Do you think it should be a partisan position, or do you think that voters should say no more with the partisanship?
Well, on both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans are doing a lot of in-house fighting. And some things we hear about, some things that we don't hear about. As the supervisor, you should be able to walk on both sides of the table, because parties should not matter when you're trying to have your voice heard.
Sure.
No, that's excellent. So why all of a sudden do you really? You kind of explained it at the beginning, but what drove you to say, "Look, I'm the person that can replace Bill Cowles and his demeanor"? Because he was always that guy that you could rely on.
Well, it's time for change. I mean, Bill Cowles had been there. He was elected in 1996. Prior to that, he worked for the previous supervisor, and we hadn't had a woman in over 40 years, and we haven't had a person of color represent us. So I think that I fit all of those criteria. I'm a person of color. I'm a woman who hasn't been in that role for over 40 years, and it's time for change.
So you're running as an NPA,
Hmm.
and there are several Democrats who are running. There's, I believe, one Republican that's running. Um, what are you hearing from voters who are not who are NPAs? What is their opinion about the supervisor of elections?
Well, because Bill Cowles has been such a permanent fixture,
Mhm.
a lot of people are surprised that there is even an election for that position.
Oh, wow.
So when I'm talking to people, people I think are excited because they're willing to learn,
Mhm.
especially when you're a avid voter. And what's disheartening is just not being educated on the process. And I think the narrative should change for a supervisor of election, that they should be out there making sure that we're educated on the process. Civil engagement is key to our democracy.
Hmm. Great. You have been a fixture in Orange County, West Orange, West Orlando politics for years. People know who you are. You've advocated for your neighbors, for your community. This is another level, another step for you. However, let's talk about your background, a little bit more about your background. What brought you all the way to this position?
Well, never in a million years would I thought I would have ever gotten myself involved in politics.
Mhm.
But politics is part of your life every day, and local politics is the most important race of all races. You know, we talk about presidential races, and we don't focus on making sure we have turnout in the non-presidential season, when it's time to vote in our governor and our legislators and our mayors and our commissioners.
Correct.
And those are the most key important races because they impact you immediately on day one.
Very true.
And so for me, I hate bullies. And I hate for people to tell me what's best for me in my community. They don't live there, so therefore they can't imagine the dynamics that goes on in my community. Just like I couldn't come in your neighborhood and tell you how to live. It's like going in your house, going in your refrigerator and sleeping on your couch rent
Right.
free,
Mhm.
and I didn't ask your permission.
Sure.
And so I just saw a lot of things through the years, and I was like, um, I have to be the change that I want to see. And so I got involved during the Al Gore race. That's how far back when I started
2000.
is I started really getting involved and starting to understand what the process was, because I mean, Florida's on the map for hanging chads.
Yes.
And so here it is. We're Florida's under the watchful eye of the world, and we are looking at hanging chads and who's going to certify this race for the next president. And I remember wearing my buttons. I remember out there making phone calls. I remember donating. And I'm like, wow, this is really important. This is more important than I ever imagined.
Right.
And so that's when I started getting involved in it. And then by the time Obama came along, I owned a restaurant.
Okay. All right.
And so my restaurant was on Douglas Avenue in Altamont.
Okay.
So I had the ability to make sure that what I believed in and my causes, I could be the change that I wanted to see. So I started getting more in depth by allowing canvassers to come to my restaurant. Oh, sorry. Canvassers that came in, they picked up their walk packets. They were able to use the Wi-Fi to make phone calls
Okay.
there and things of that nature. So it was just a different level of experience, and the excitement, and we had a watch party when he won, and just the look on everybody's faces and the tears and the hugs and the joy. And it was like, okay, let me delve into this a little bit further.
Okay. All right. All right. Joel did.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what kind of change you said you used the word change, be the change, and what kind of change do you want to see at the supervisor of elections office?
So what I would like to see is more education and engagement, because like I said, they're not really teaching civics in school, and I learned off of Saturday morning cartoons. So you can learn as early as kindergarten. And I would love to see a teen academy for civic engagement, as well as an adult academy for those who may know something but don't know everything as how the election process works. So academies for both teens and adults. One of the other things is we have what they call an express vote machine. And that express vote machine, if you've ever voted in person, it's available to those who have some type of disability. They may not be able to see very well, or maybe they had a stroke and they can't hold a pen very well. It's a touch screen where They can look at that screen, they can vote for their person by touch, the ballot is printed out, and then they feed it through the VSI machine. What I'd like to see with that is during early vote, we put some in the senior facilities and the rehab and nursing homes, because access to the vote or transportation, we have some of the poorest transportation here. If they have to utilize transportation, it costs them a fee most times to go to and from. And when you're talking about like our Go Link system, they have to make an appointment to get transportation 2 hours ahead of schedule just so that they can get to their location. And I don't feel so bad now.
Sorry about that.
It's so that they can.
If everybody's wondering if mine's going to go off. You're next, Joel. Okay.
You're next, Joel.
Yeah.
Mine went off just before the show.
So,
Mine did go off.
so
We're just very busy people.
yeah. So that provides access for someone who can vote in the comfort of the facility that they reside in versus having to try to figure out how to get to their location. And transparency, accessibility, access.
It sounds like a good plan, but is this not something that once you try to implement it, you would feel that you'd have to go face the legislature because they're going to, that would seem like, you know, the machine inside, you know, you'd have to make sure that it's secure. How's that?
So in the Florida statutes, it says that if you're a facility and you request it, that the supervisor of elections must provide it.
So they have to request it.
Yes.
Okay.
But the thing of it is, I can put the cart before the horse on this one and say, well, you don't have to request it. We're going to make it accessible to you.
Okay.
Wow. We have an election coming up in the city of Orlando, May 21st.
Correct.
Are you keeping a close eye on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Is there anything that we as Orlandians, Orange County citizens should be looking for as far as just how the election is conducted from the point of view of the Orange County Supervisor of Elections?
So the race is May 21st, and there are 7 candidates in that race. One of the things that I would say is do your research. Most importantly, I actually live in that district.
Okay.
And we can go back to the beginning of time. We have had poor representation.
Sure.
District 5, we have all the social services there that nobody else wants. We also have some of the biggest venues.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're correlating the two, it's like oil and water meets each other.
Okay.
For this race, there are some interesting candidates.
Yes.
I would say not just one, all of them.
Okay.
So I'll keep it on an even keel for that. That all of the candidates are very interesting. However, do your research. Make sure that you show up, because you have 23,000 registered voters and less than 2,000 show up to vote. That includes early vote, that includes vote by mail, and that includes election day. And if you are in District 5, if you want to vote by mail, May 9th is the last day to request your ballot. If you are going to early vote, your early vote location is at the Supervisor of Elections, nowhere else. If you are registered voting your polling location, hopefully things haven't changed in the office. They're sending out mailers to let you know your voting location. Make sure you show up on election day if you haven't voted any other way.
Hmm.
If you receive a vote by mail and you have not early voted with your vote by mail and you're at election day deadline, go to your polling location, make your vote count. Surrender your ballot and vote at the polls.
Okay.
There's a lot of rules that go into this position, and you're very knowledgeable as you're answering questions that, I'm like detailed questions. Like, how did you get your knowledge of how the supervisor of elections and how elections work?
Well, I've worked the elections, so I worked the elections a lot. For me, I'm not a person that just kind of like throw my name on a list and then just sit back. I like to know everything. I'm a reader, so I'm going to read what the rules are because that's your Bible. The Florida statutes, that's your Bible. And so when you're faced with something, you want to be in a position, although they train you when you're working elections, you want to make sure that the what ifs are covered too. So you can have anybody come and ask you something that it wasn't covered in the training. So what shall I do?
So the word provisional ballot, I like
Hmm.
the word, but usually provisional. I've never seen a provisional ever actually get counted. Because a provisional ballot is because you went to the wrong polling place and you said, well, I'm not going to go anyplace else. And you take and you do a provisional ballot.
Hmm.
Your address changed. There was no evidence of that.
Mm.
But you were supposed to vote here or there. So provisionals, that's a behind the scenes thing, isn't it?
It is a behind the scenes, but the provisional ballots are counted at the end of the day because you have to certify the election. Once the results are in, they're unofficial in the beginning, and then they go through another process, and then you'll get an official count. So provisional ballots are counted at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's at the canvassing board.
That is it, correct.
Right. So the canvassing board meets, and that's before the certification. And that's something that, I just wanted to kind of cover because people say your vote doesn't count, and you said it does.
It does.
Doing the provisional ballot, it could be thrown out, but it's going to be counted or rejected.
Right. And so even on election day, and it's open to the public at 8 a.m. on election day, you can do a public viewing on election day. A lot of people don't know that either. So you can come and you can observe the process. You can go to the canvassing board when the election is over. There's so many things that people don't know that I think is very important.
So you've thought about making it offering to the schools that they come by supervisor of elections office so they can see what goes on and stuff like that. You're really thinking outside the box. I think that's interesting. So Orange County has got a great opportunity. What else do you want to cover before we do this, David?
I want, well, two things. Let's go with the most controversial part. Uh, The city of Orlando, this is something that we have talked about on our shows before.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Orlando has its elections at a separate time
Mm-hmm.
than other elections and some other municipalities also.
Correct.
Why don't we have the city elections the same time? Or is it possible, or what is your opinion on having the city elections the same time as the Orange County elections, the presidential election calendar?
Okay. So historically, municipalities have their own election rules and put things in their charters.
Okay.
So, City of Orlando used to be in the spring. So, March, April, that used to be city elections,
Okay.
and that was changed in 2015, I believe it was, when the presidential election was coming up in 16.
Okay.
So you have 13 municipalities
Mm,
in Orange County.
right.
So if you put all 13 municipalities along with the county-wide race, that's a lot of
That's a lot of
precincts
elections. Yes, right.
and things of that nature, and a lot of confusion.
Okay.
So it does kind of make it easier that the municipalities are in a different season
Okay.
than your county-wide race or your general election race. So that makes it easier. However, turnout is low.
Right.
And
That's
so
my second point.
and with turnout being low, that's why it's so important to be educated.
Right.
Because we in March, we just had 6 races. So Winter Park, Winter Garden, Apopka, Ocoee, Oakland, and Belle Isle.
Okay.
They all had their races March 19th.
Okay.
A lot of people didn't even know that they had a race, because some people don't even know if they live in the city limits or in the county.
Right.
So, the county has a general rule, and they're the governing body of the municipalities. However, the municipalities have their own governing rules.
Right.
And so that's why we're...
Is there a space for the supervisor of elections to encourage turnout by advertising, at least on billboards? Hey, there's a municipal election going on in your community. Is it right for the supervisor of elections to take?
It's right for the supervisor of elections to make sure that you maintain the integrity of elections, but it's up to the individual municipalities when it comes to turnout, because you don't want that cost going to countywide when you'll have someone say, well, I don't live in the city limits of or Orlando, or I don't live in the city limits of Ocoee or Apopka or Windermere,
Right.
or Belle Isle. So, there's a cost that is associated with that. So
The city's paying, so the city is paying the county to do the ballot, the locations and everything else.
Right.
That's why if you wanted to turn in your paperwork, you turn it in at the clerk, right?
Correct.
So the clerk is taking care of all that so that your people
I'm not burdened.
would be free to do their own thing.
Okay.
And then they pay you to make sure that on election day, they're charged by the county for that election. That really makes a lot of sense. So they can kick it down, they can kick it anywhere they want to, as long as they pay you.
Correct.
So jack up the price. Tom, if it's an off year, it looks like shit. No, charge you more shit. But you can't make this shit up. That election, Dana and I talk about it all the time.
All the time.
It was switched and how it was switched. And they blamed it on the supervisor of elections, because the supervisor said it's going to be complicated, confusing to send out your ballots just prior to this election. So they gather themselves in a meeting. They all vote except for Sam Ings to move it
a year ahead
in an off year, and then a whole year basically goes by for it to come up. So that they extended their term and they moved everything around. But people had no voice in this. So this is why you got to be involved.
Yeah.
Go to those city council meetings.
Yes.
And say, what are you doing? Shouldn't you advocate that the people should choose when that is? It's going to be another low turnout thing, but
especially with the new rules, because when you have seniors who vote by mail,
Correct,
and they lack proper transportation if they wanted to vote in person, you're going to have even lower turnout, I think, than any other race. I might get surprised, but I think the turnout with the new rules, the turnout is going to be even much lower than it has been in the past.
What can we do? What can we do to it? Or what should we be doing to increase that voter turnout?
Education. Education is the key, because when I'm talking to people, they're like, we got an election? And, if I was talking to people in March in the various municipalities, and they were like, well, I know there are presidential races in November. I'm like, well, you have a race coming up in March, and you have a primary in August. And this is why a lot of times people don't even come out in the primary and they say, well, I want to vote for so and so. Well, by November, if you didn't go out and vote in August, they're not on the ballot because you didn't go out and vote.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So you can't make this shit up.
No, you can't.
Crazy.
I mean, the county can't advertise for the city. The city has to do the initial, trying to push that, out. And we don't show up for these elections because we don't know. But I would think that the biggest question that comes to you when you say I'm running for supervisor of elections is, why would you run against Bill Collins?
Yeah, because it's amazing. Before I came here today, I was speaking to someone and they were like, I just found out the other day that Bill left. I say he left in January. And they're like, what?
Wow.
So, and that's
5
why it's
months
so
later.
important to
Yeah.
educate. But, he was such a permanent fixture for 40 years. So, it's like Earl K. Wood. Those who remember Earl K. Wood had been there, I know, since I was a little kid. He died in office. So, when you have permanent fixtures and you just kind of go through the motions and you don't do your research and you don't educate yourself, you become lackadaisical. And a lot of people still, when I talk to them, they're like, they don't even know that the governor has already appointed someone in that seat. And they're like, what? So,
Wow.
so education is key. So, my charge to the municipalities, the 13 of them, is when they have elections that they are more engaged in the civic process.
So my toughest question and my last question is, why should I, if I was in Orange County, vote for you?
You should vote for Cynthia Harris because Cynthia Harris cares. I've been here. I'm an advocate for the people. I'm not for any personal gain. I want to make sure that everybody has a safe, accessible election, a voice in our community with integrity and transparency. And you're not going to find that with anyone else who's in this race. Most of them couldn't even tell you what any of the machines are like on the inside or the outside. I've had an opportunity to also shadow other supervisors in other counties. And our elections are a little bit different than theirs, but they're all similar at the end of the day. And that's something that you won't find in any other candidate who's in this race. I'm not here to pad my resume. I'm not here for a check. I'm here because I
I
care.
just have a little follow up in that question because I probably should have said, how can people actually get in touch with you? Or it must be a fortune that you're spending your money. How did they give you money?
So, Cynthia Harris is cynthiaforchange.com is my website. It's kind of currently under construction right now because we're still tweaking some things in there. But my telephone number is 407-308-2975. 407-308-2975, and I can guide you on how you can help. Currently, I'm on the ground. I'm trying to get petitions. There's 2 ways to be on the ballot: pay $11,000 or get signatures. Getting signatures is more productive for me because it gives me an opportunity to speak with voters and educate them while I'm speaking to them. You're not going to find that in any other candidate also. So 407-308-2975. You can contact me. I answer my phone. And if I don't, it's probably because I'm here with guys like
with
you. Yeah, so I do return phone calls and I'm out in the field constantly trying to meet people, educate you, and guide you in the right direction. So again, I'm not here to pad my resume. I have a laundry list of things that I do that I don't need to brag about. Um, I'm not in this race just to get a check. We've had too many people who are commuter candidates who come into our political system. They sit on their duffs and they get check after check after check, and we keep voting them in, or we don't show up and they still continuously get in. You want a candidate that's going to be on the ground, talking to you, educating you, and have personality.
Excellent, excellent. I'm always looking for those viral moments in our interviews, and I always have a got you question, which is a friendly one. So if you can indulge me,
Okay.
you mentioned earlier that you sang, yeah, a singing voice, and you also mentioned it's coming that and like and this happened for me and Joel too, growing up watching Schoolhouse Rock and learning, like the preamble. You want to sing that first line?
What, the
From
preamble?
Yeah.
I see somebody else smiling. You better go get your Schoolhouse Rock videos. They on VHS. You seen them? That's good for you. But I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
Well, well, well. There's our moment right there.
Well, it was less than 30 seconds, so so we're within the radar of not infringing on a trademark.
Thank you so much, Cynthia Harris, candidate for Orange County Supervisor of Elections. Her election will be in November 2024 if there's no other NPA candidate. And we really appreciate the fact that you appeared here with us so you can make this shit up.
Like, share. Make sure it gets on to from out of our social media to the people that need this information. So I only count on you for that. And you get to have the last word.
So 407-308-2975. Call me to phone bank, hit the ground running and educate. Help me get these petitions done before the deadline and to donate.
What is that deadline? How fast do they have to react?
I'm giving myself the next month because June 10th is the last day for qualification by money. May
I think 14.
14.
I think the 14th of May or sometime during that week
We don't want to be rated for this.
by petition.
Right.
Yeah.
So please help any way you can. No small gesture is not welcome. So I welcome all help.
Excellent.